And here is the Writer's Almanac for Monday, the 21st of December, 2020. It's the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the shortest day of the year, the first day of winter. Some ancient people believed that because daylight was waning, it might go away, so they lit big bonfires to tempt the sun to come back. It's the birthday of the writer Edward Hoagland, born 1932, New York City, grew up in New Canaan, Connecticut. His first novel, Catman, published when he was just 23 years old. He'd worked for the Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, tending the big cats, the novel based on that. The novel was published to great acclaim. Hoagland was in the Army at the time and only found out about it when his superior officer said, "Private Hoagland, do you know your picture is in Time magazine?" Wrote another novel, The Circle Home, started traveling, took trips to Africa and Alaska, wrote books of essays, Children Are Diamonds, Sex, and the River Styx. Many essays about wilderness. Edward Hoagland said he writes about wilderness because people will want to know what those wild places were like when there are no more wild places. It was on this day in 1620 the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth Rock. Bad weather had forced them off course. Winter was imminent, so they decided to stay. Most people spent the winter on board the ship. Others went ashore to build some shelter. The region was home to about 40,000 Indians, the Wampanoag Indians, Wampanoag, which means the people of the first light. The Pilgrims did not meet the Indians until March of the following year. They made a treaty with the chief, Massasoit, to establish peaceful relations. And one man named Squanto, who had spent some time in London, agreed to live with the Pilgrims and show them how to plant native crops. It was on this day, 1913, the first crossword puzzle appeared in a newspaper. It was in the New York World. A journalist named Arthur Wynne had invented it. He called it a word cross, but the typesetter got the words mixed up, called it a crossword, and that name stuck. In 1924, two men, Richard Simon and Lincoln Schuster, set up a publishing house, Simon & Schuster. They were looking for ideas of what to publish. They came out with a book of crossword puzzles, and it sold 500,000 copies in less than a year. By the end of the 30s, most daily papers had a crossword puzzle in them, and ironically, one of the last newspapers to do so was the New York Times, which began its daily puzzle only in 1950. Here's a poem for today by Connie Wannock, Old Duluth, for Lewis Jenkins. We still walk down the hillside where bedrock surfaces like the back of a huge gray pike come to glare at you before it breaks your line. A raven alights on top of a white pine, then flings himself off, while a cottontail springs away through the clearing where teenagers leave their empty vodka bottles. Everything that enters through my eyes arrives at my brain upside down, which is how the lake has become the sky at last. Here's the very trail we used to take to come and listen and laugh when you were alive, and here is the end of it. I look down into the future, and there's the past rising up one last time. Old Duluth, a poem by Connie Wannock, used by permission of the poet here on the Writer's Almanac. Be well, do good work, and keep in touch.